Hi there, John here, Microaces Workshop. Welcome to part 4 of the Percee twin engine aircraft build. We are on the stage now of building the horizontal stabilizer and elevator before finishing off the fuselage. If we just have a quick look down onto the build board, there's the fuselage as we've got so far. And I've got T2 and T3, I think, oh sorry, Z2 and Z3. So this is the horizontal stabilizer. That's the elevator. Our laser cutter has been a little bit overzealous with the score, but we can deal with that. We can cope with that. That's fine. So it's about assembling this part. Unlike every other Microaces build to date, I think this is actually printed on one side, and in fact, this will all fold over and form both sides of the horizontal stabilizer. Which it's a bigger aircraft. We can afford to do that. Obviously the additional weight of having two pieces of foam rather than one piece of foam, but of course it's bigger. It needs more stability. It needs more structure to hold it together. And as you can see, it's it's quite flexible as is. So doubling it up is only going to help us. And of course it looks more scale, even though this is a sort of a semi-scale aircraft. It will look the part. So I'm just trimming off some of the tabs. I'm taking this out of the sheet. The 1mm foam sheet, and there are a couple of things that we need to do. Firstly, for those of you who love sanding, we need to sand the tips so that when we fold and glue this together, we can squeeze them out to a point. And although of course this is a white part anyway, because that's the livery that we've got here, so having white edges isn't going to be too much of an issue. But of course we get that sort of the curved shape at the tips as well, which is always nice to have. Yeah, so the area that we're going to sand, I'll mark it out here, and I'm sure it'll be put into the just make sure I've got, yeah, there's a sort of a subtle ribbing on the printed side. So I want to sort of sand, yes, if you can see that kind of that area there. Maybe not so much, doesn't have to be in there because it's quite difficult to get to with a sanding stick, but that area there, I'll just mark it out. So let's see where I'm going, and then I shall I don't know whether you can take it to the edge there. Can't see that. So how are we going to deal with that? Let us. Okay. This is scales, so I'm sure they won't mind a little bit of roughing up around the edges. So you can see I'm just sort of sanding with a stroke away from the material, and I'm putting it right to the edge of this angle. Actually works very well, so that I'm wearing away the material to a point. And being very, very careful in doing it too. I'm sure if you've made Microaces kits before, you know exactly what I mean by this. It's just putting a very shallow bevel, and the idea is that we're trying to get the material right at the edge to almost a point, basically. And it can be a quite laborious process, but keeps you in the moment. If you don't concentrate, you can ruin it. So, I'm not using a massive amount of pressure. I think I'm actually using the rougher side of the sanding stick, but this is actually, it's not a new sanding stick, so there's not as much bite in it as there used to be. Okay. Have a look now and again. Sort of gently, I'll go to the smoother side. I won't cause any unnecessary damage. So it's just a process of sanding until you're happy with the material that you've removed, and that when we fold this over and glue it together, you'll be able to pinch those together nicely. Good, okay. Well, I'm going to crack on with that. You don't have to. Well, unless you're building it, you obviously have to. But I'll get this finished off, and then we can fold it. So I have sanded my edges. I went a little bit too far there. You see, I've just managed to knock a nick out of there. And the reason I did that was my mind started wandering, and I was thinking about flying the sock with camel. Sad but true. Yeah, and just took it a little bit too far, but fortunately not too bad. So we now need to score this so that we can fold it over on itself, and we need to make sure the manual will have this so you can clarify. But when I built the militaire, I got one of these wrong. I got it wrong. I had to do it again, and it doesn't look too bad, but you definitely know if you're studying the aircraft closely that it was done incorrectly in the first place. So here we go. Now that takes some pushing to try and bring together. So what I'm going to do is just move it the other way and then just remove some of the material from within that fold. It should help it to fold over on itself. But obviously you don't want to go too far. It's still resisting. So there we go. And we actually get quite a nice sort of sharp leading edge that then bulges as the real one would. So that folds down nicely on itself, so all parts are covering the other parts. So let's just do the other side. I think it was the second one I got wrong as well, so I really wasn't paying attention. Back side of the knife. 1, 2. Wear away some of that material. Right. Over we go. Yep, that's good too. Right, so the only thing left to do is to glue this, but when we are gluing it, we've got to be mindful that the elevator is going to go there, and we've got hinges that actually sit, rather than in our previous builds where they're stickers that act as hinges. We've actually got one. I'm sure I had one right. Here we go. We have these little lozenge-shaped parts, but these are actually the plastics. And what happens is that you'll notice on the elevator there's a score running down the middle. This one, as I said, has been scored rather aggressively, but there are also some holes cut through, and there should be 4, and that will allow for a hinge to be glued and poked through. So those will then subsequently be positioned into the rear edge, the trailing edge of the horizontal stabilizer. So what we're going to do when we glue this down is we're actually going to allow for those to be poked in, so we don't want to glue the areas where that's going to happen. So what I suggest you do, and it'll be marked on the manual anyway, but what I'm going to do is just subtly draw a shape around where these hinges are going to be inserted. So I'll try and keep my glue away from there now. Just move that to the next slot, so I can make that position known. Let's do it. Let's judge it. So, good. Right, so let's move those to one side. Get rid of some of this foam dust from sanding, and then I'm going to bring those together like so. Good. Right. So this will need a decent amount of glue. So I'll put plenty on the tips, but smear it quite thinly, because what we don't want to do is it squidge out and go all over the place. So I'm going to put it on both sides so we get a good sort of contact adhesion. Now look what I've done. I've immediately gone over where the hinge is supposed to insert. What an idiot. So I'm going to actually just take that away, silly boy, and start gluing this rather than that, which would be the most sensible thing to do. So I'll run some glue down the fold line into the center here. Avoid. Okay. Avoid. Clever boy. Eventually. So onto the tips. Good. So let's just bring those together briefly, just to make sure we get some transfer. And then we'll just let that sit for a second or two and then bring it all together. So let's do that. So any glue that I get on my fingers gets immediately removed. Edges together, and I am getting a little bit of glue squeezing out there, but feeding off, so it's not fluid anymore. And then when it eventually it comes to adding the elevator, we can just make sure with the tip of the blade that we've got some cavities there to insert the hinges into. Using the fingernail to flatten things down, shrink things at the edge. You can actually use, you've seen me do this before, the base for the knife. It's actually quite useful for compressing things. Now, on this, which is essentially a prototype part, I forgot to allow for the little mushroom part here in the rear. So that goes on, and that there should be a slot there that allows that to drop down. So I'm going to cut that, but obviously the parts that you get will actually have the slot in, and also I'm just going to trim a tiny piece of foam, just a slight misalignment. I've got, so we get a nice flat trailing edge. Fantastic. Good. Right. Okay. So we need to now pop that on there, and I'll just magic the slot for you before we do that. Ta-da! We have a slot. So now we can pop our horizontal stabilizer onto the rear of the aircraft, like so. So it all sort of slots in there. I'll just see if I can show you being white, it's blows it out slightly. So there are a couple of slots in the rearmost former here, just at the edges, where the little tabs on the front of the horizontal stabilizer sit there, and then this edge here sits up against that that former. So it just slots in. Go on, there we go, and then just sits down that slot, and then allows that little 1mm former to pop up. That should be sitting, or the trailing edge of the stabilizer should be sitting at the back of the aircraft, which it is, flush pretty much. So we can just glue that in place now. This little platform obviously offers us quite a large surface area to attach the part to, the tail feather. So we can be a little bit generous with the glue. Obviously this is an important structural part, so go. And then, now obviously on this particular part that's white on both sides, you want to make sure that the seam where we folded the parts over, that seam is underneath, and then it's the right way up. It's more obvious on the militaire because obviously it's yellow underneath and camouflage on top. So the alignment should be pretty good. Obviously you want to align with the slot that's already in the fuselage, which obviously accommodates the vertical stabilizer. So there we go. So let's just eyeball it. Looks pretty flat to me. Yep. Okay, happy with that. So the next step, we'll put our elevator to the side at the moment. We don't actually need that. I thought we would, but we don't. We can that can go on at a later date. And we need, it's T12. So here we go. T12. Yeah. Now this obviously is throwing it at it. Sits at the back here. Might as well put a little bit of a curve on it. Can only help. Well, before we do that, let's just make sure our tabs are completely removed. Then we'll dry fit just to make sure we're happy. I mean, the idea with the design of this kit is that all these parts should fit pretty well, but there may be, depending on how it's assembled, because each one will be obviously a tiny bit different, there may be a little amount of trimming that's required. Well, hopefully not. did spend quite a lot of time on getting these parts as accurate as possible. So. Okay, well, that all looks pretty good. So, yeah, looks like it's going to fit well. So, put some glue on. So once again, I'm going to run it down the edges. Oh, let's clean that tip up a bit. You wouldn't do that to a balsa model, would you now, Mr. Porter? Yes, I probably would. Okay. Here we go. When you're gluing these tabs, what might be actually useful is to just push them out slightly, so so they resist a little when you're putting pressure from above on them as you're putting the skin on, and then obviously you probably get more surface area of the tab in contact with the part, and hopefully get a better, more secure bond. Mr. Bond. Okay. So we do need to add a little to our formers. Even the little ones down here. And we'll run a little bit just down the edge. It sits on top. Just remembered. I want to add a bit of shape there first, so let's get rid of that little bit of glue. And where's my tiny paintbrush? There we go. Right. This doesn't actually have a lot of support, that tail. Give it a bit of shape. That shape hopefully will stay put once it's in place. So here we go. Right, let's reapply that little bit of glue to the edges. Go. Right. This definitely needs plenty of concentration, especially as my glue has gone off now. Sorry for the lack of speech, but I am almost speechless. Well, apart from a tiny little sort of notchette there, seems to have gone down pretty darn well. Yes, I think that's the best result I've had so far. Okay on that side. Maybe I'll just give it a millimetre more of width in the cut file, so that hopefully yours will just have that little extra bit. Or do we have an overlap? No. So, fingernail out. Let's blend it out. That looks lovely. I'm really happy with that. That just looks the ticket. And as I said, this is a bit of a learning experience for all of us. We're all in this together. There. Splendid stuff. So, that's quite a result. We've got the fuselage fully covered, and that, if anyone's interested so far, let's see how much that weighs, just out of curiosity. So that comes in at just under 16 grams for the whole fuselage. So not too bad at all, I don't think. For it's it's a relatively sizable model. So yeah, happy with that. And it's solid. Right. The next phase that we're going to go on to, which we probably won't cover in this video, but we will certainly prepare for, is putting the or building up the inner wings, and then attaching the nacelles that we've already built. But what we're going to do, if I've got it here, yes, do. Side, that's the plastics. We need our ribs, wing ribs. I know that's another big difference. I know that that the aircraft that we've done so far do have ribs, usually exposed ribs. These are not going to be exposed ribs, and there is a subtle difference as well. For those of you who've built Microaces aircraft before, you'll know that the profile of the wings tends to be a triangle. It's easy to manufacture, and it's a very, very effective flying wing for a small aircraft. This is slightly bigger. Wing chord is wider. We have curves. We have curves. So, where are we? We need V26. There we go, V26. So let's, in fact, V26, these are 2 wing ribs, but it's easier to cut them together like this, and then the finishing flourish is to just down the score, run your knife, and then you have 2 ribs. And just remove those little parts there. And these actually sit at the root. There are a couple of slots they tuck into on the spars. There and there. And you can see on the fuselage graphic itself, there is a line that it essentially follows along the bottom there. And so you just glue them in place there, and on the other side, oh, we've got a little traveller. There we go. So let's get this one gummed up and in place. Go. And this can go straight on. Try not to get too much glue smeared over the side of the aircraft. Okay, and just encourage that into position. There we go. Fantastic. That little hole there, that's where we can push our wires through for motors and obviously aileron servos. Okay, I didn't glue that one, did I? So let's do the sensible thing. Although I've got away with it on that side without getting any glue on the fuselage. It would be easier if I just applied the glue like so. Ah. Yeah, it's nice and easy. Okay. So now those are on, we have our wing ribs to go on too. So these are our V27s. Oh look, we've got more V26. Those are obviously spare. Saying nothing more. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the V27s. Go. So cut them in half. So the laser has not been set properly. Some of these bits are remaining, but that's fine. Saves having to pick them off the laser bed. Just send them in the post to you. Okay, so let's just get rid of that muck. So the next step is a much more traditional setup, traditional step. Well, that's just attaching the wing ribs like so. Right, let's get some glue on that and start popping them on. I think they all fit. I'm getting so excited about this, I'm even getting glue all over myself. And then you pop one on the end here, but be mindful when adding the glue added it to the wrong side, so we'll switch over. Be mindful that there are some little ply braces that slot into the little tunnel that's there created by the plastic. Plastic is a little bit out of whack. So I've put the glue on the inside face so that it doesn't get, or it doesn't gum up the tunnel. Oh, that's nice and flush right at the end of that. So let's put the middle one on. And then you can eyeball it just to make sure everything is lining up nicely. Obviously these ribs are, when you compare them to something like a balsa rib or a ply rib, and they're much more flexible. So it's worth being aware of that, certainly when you're making this this wing. The rigidity really comes from the 1mm material rather than the internal, well, certainly this internal structure. Awesome. Right, last one. Then we can all go and have tea, or breakfast, or lunch, or whenever you're watching this. So just popping it on the inner face. On as long as the leading edge lines up with all three, the one against or the one at the root, and then leading out to the outer. These bits they'll kick up a bit, but once the material's on the wings, then it'll be a different matter. There we go. So we're ready to put our wing skin on, but I'm going to leave it there, and we will progress with that, and hopefully getting the nacelles onto the fuselage as well in the next episode. So great work today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.